Warm welcome, dear viewers and viewers in Health Television. Today, we will talk about the topic of neurogenesis and also clarify the question of whether brain cells can really regrow. Whether that is the case or not, you will find out after the intro. So stay tuned. See you soon. Welcome back, and a warm welcome, dear Heinz Lüscher. You are the head of the Weiss Medicine Clinic, and I am grateful that you are here today.
Hello, Fabian. I'm happy to come to you.
It always makes me happy. Let's just jump right into the topic. I already posed the question at the beginning. Can brain cells really regrow or not?
I studied medicine 40 years ago. Back then we learned we come into the world with 14 billion brain cells, and those cannot regrow. So one has to manage with this number of brain cells for the rest of life. They are only destroyed in smaller numbers by toxins, or also by aging. That's why the brain deteriorates. That's how I learned it back then. The new studies show that this is not true. Now one has to distinguish whether brain cells regenerate or simply improve. A brain cell has many branches, which are called synapses. Each cell is connected with dozens of synapses to the neighboring cell. These synapses in the cerebral cortex can grow, they can increase. The more synapses are present or connected with other cells, the more efficient the brain is. This has nothing to do with the growth of cells, but only the function is improved. That is what it is about in the brain. But there is a special structure in the brain, the hippocampus. There, cells can regenerate.
Where is this hippocampus located?
That is a bit difficult to show. Right at the center of the brain. Deep down near the brainstem. It goes up from the spinal column. The spinal cord is the extension of the brain. It has a transition, the brainstem. This hippocampus is deep down close to the brainstem. It looks like a seahorse. The word hippocampus means in German seahorse, or lizard. A lizard also has a certain resemblance. These are structures deep inside the brain. There we take in all the knowledge, all impressions. If the audience is listening to us now and hopefully learning something, then this information first goes into this hippocampus. The more we engage with expert knowledge, politics, reading, conversations, lectures, books, etc., the more we feed our brain, the more new cells are formed in this hippocampus.
It's about the formation of new cells through this knowledge, but also about the connections of synapses between these cells.
Exactly. But the synapses, we're talking about the entire brain, the cerebral cortex. There the information is stored. As we accumulate experiences throughout life, we rely on stored knowledge. The more I use my brain, the more new synapses are formed. This is a very important process. That's why, please people, I can only emphasize this again. Think for yourselves. I like the expression of Professor Hockert's. People think in a supervised way. We let others think for us.
Discover your favorite experts on Wikisana now.
The government tells us what we have to do. Science tells us what I should think. If I simply take over what others think uncritically, then I don't need my brain. That's harmful in the long run.
Then it would really make sense to start small, to challenge yourself with quizzes, to play different games where my brain is put to the test, or to read.
Absolutely. The brain is like a muscle. When it's used, it's strong. If you set it aside, become just a consumer, only watch television, or simply do nothing more from life, then the brain cells decline. The synapses. But there is no regeneration of brain cells in the hippocampus. Social contacts are very important. We have a loneliness of people in our large cities, and probably also in the countryside. But people are no longer connected to each other. In the past, there was the extended family, there were clubs, people met and talked to each other. Today, people are very self-centered. Loneliness is a huge problem in our society. It harms our brain. We need to be challenged. Quizzes and games are okay, but that is not the big challenge. For me, what matters is that people think for themselves. Let's take a medical program. You have an illness, then please deal with it. But people go to the doctor, who knows better than I do anyway, and I just do what he says. That's not good. I love my patients the most when they manage their illness themselves. Inform yourself. The information is there on the internet, both good and bad, both false and true. Read both and think about what the truth is. When you read a bad article, you find that out, if you think.
I completely agree with you. If you consider that my brain is constantly learning, also being challenged, that would actually be a prevention against Alzheimer's.
Absolutely. We will do another show about Alzheimer's. That is not a fate that can be prevented. But that starts at your age, not just after retirement. You have to actively shape life, fully utilize your brain capacity. Then Alzheimer's will never occur. A few other things are part of it, but Alzheimer's is really not a fate. Rather, it is the result of our sluggish lifestyle that we simply go along with the masses.
I would like to briefly bring in an old myth. When I was a child, I was always taught that if you get too many hits on the head, or with every hit on the head, even if it's not hard, that brain cells can die.
So you mean slaps?
For example, slaps in the face. Or let's say you do martial arts. You might get hit like that every now and then. Does that damage brain cells? Or is that really a myth?
No, that's being discussed in football with heading. We know that if someone has had multiple concussions in life, in sports, there is an increased risk of dementia. What is destroyed in a concussion? I'm not the specialist, but the brain can only handle a certain amount of impact. It's about the strength. There are mild concussions, which have no consequences. But if a football player has collided with his head 10 times in his career and then lies unconscious, that has consequences. That's for sure.
But it has to be more in the direction of mild or serious concussions.
Yes, absolutely. But I think the problem is being discussed in football. Should heading be avoided in training? How can you do it in a game if you don't practice it? These are difficult questions, but one should imagine when the ball is deflected from the goal and you are in the middle of the other field and take a hit to the head. These are always small blows that are certainly not optimal for the brain.
Would you say there are certain factors that influence neurogenesis in relation to age? Can younger people handle it better than older? Or does it not matter, but rather how much my brain is challenged?
At any age, one must challenge the brain. And we can influence neurogenesis, yes, absolutely. The brain also needs nutrition, like the rest of the body. So healthy eating plays a big role. Stress also plays a role. Stress prevents neurogenesis. That sounds dramatic.
Yes, especially when I look at the society, I feel that almost everyone is stressed out somewhere, almost every day.
That's true. That's very bad for brain function. Stress triggers cortisol release. Adrenaline, the adrenal gland, is highly taxed during stress. This primarily produces cortisol, and cortisol directly prevents neurogenesis. How far? Whether that's 0 or maybe just 10%, I don't know exactly. But it is certainly the case that stress is a factor. And what is also important is sleep. Because this neurogenesis occurs during sleep, not now when we think, but in calm. So if you are sleep disordered, then this neurogenesis, these new brain cells, are also hindered in growth.
Sleep disordered, do you mean waking up repeatedly at night, or is it just about not getting enough sleep?
Yes, everything. We have become a performance-oriented society, and sleep is viewed as useless time. It's better to sleep less and achieve more, and that is wrong. Recent research shows that if we sleep too little, the brain really suffers damage. So we need, I believe the average person needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep. But many are now contradicting this. I manage with 5. Yes, that's true, but in the long run I'm not sure. I believe it's not good for the brain. So sleep is important, and it's not just about that. We all wake up in the night, that's normal. We have different sleep depths, and we always go back to level 1, 2 or 3 times per night, waking up for a few minutes. Sometimes we remember, sometimes we don't, but we all wake up 2 or 3 times a night. That's normal. However, if you wake up at 2 o'clock and can't fall back asleep for 2 hours, that's harmful. Then we disrupt neurogenesis.
Could we also tell the high achievers in our society that if you want to perform so much, then it's even more important to get enough sleep?
That's how I see it. So okay, I am now a bit older, maybe I need more because of that. But if I haven't had my 7 to 8 hours of sleep, then I'm not really capable of functioning the next day. I still work about 11 hours a day on the cut. To achieve that, I need a good restful sleep. But that's a different topic now. How many viewers think now he can run well if he sleeps well? I have sleep problems. That is one of the most common issues we have in society. sleep disorders. That is, of course, related again to stress. It's not easy to solve. But if I really have both, stress and poor sleep, and maybe also poor nutrition and few social contacts, then my neurogenesis is really very disturbed.
If we could go back to the topic of nutrition, what are some typical foods that can support neurogenesis, or substances that can support neurogenesis? I always have in mind the hazelnut, this brain food.
There is no food that is specifically very good. It's about a balanced diet with rich micronutrients. If you only live on pasta, that is starch, glucose, thousands of micronutrients are missing. We need the balance of all vitamins and trace elements, minerals, and amino acids. We need everything. But this concerns not only the brain, but the whole body. But in particular, the brain also needs omega-3 fatty acids. We are all deficient if we don't help out with that.
Will it help then if I buy an omega-3 and take it as it says on the package? Or does it make more sense to measure what is my level and what do I need?
Basically, correct science always means we measure, then supplement, and then we measure again. But these measurements cost money. We all know that healthcare is too expensive and we have to save everywhere. That is my dilemma. I would prefer to say, let's measure everyone. That would be optimal. But for financial reasons, that doesn't always work. But measuring an omega-3 level, that's a key parameter for me. It is practically never measured in conventional medicine, nor is vitamin D. These two measurements are absolutely central. If we have enough vitamin D and enough omega-3, we can prevent dozens of diseases.
And they are just two substances. I think it's nice that you mentioned that. I say that before taking none at all. It's better to take a little without measuring than to take nothing at all.
You never do anything wrong. A little fish oil, capsules, whatever you like. If you take that, we only have enough omega-3 if we eat fish at least 3 times a week. Who actually does that?
And how much does the fish still have in it compared to earlier?
It does have omega-3, but unfortunately, it also has heavy metals. Then we have another problem again. It is difficult to behave healthily in our world. It really is not easy.
There is always this, but...
Yes.
In summary, the optimal neurogenesis would be if stress is massively reduced or even eliminated, enough sleep, daily thinking and challenges, omega-3, vitamin D.
Yes.
What else is there? We also need to pay attention to the sugar level. The brain produces insulin itself. It has its own insulin supply. The insulin that comes from the pancreas does not cross the blood-brain barrier. We need brain insulin. This decreases over the course of life. In stress, this brain insulin is blocked by cortisol. That is still a very important process. Insulin helps to bring glucose into the cell so that the cell can produce energy from glucose. When brain insulin decreases due to high cortisol, then the brain floats in sugar. We have enough nutrients. But due to the lack of insulin, the sugar is not pushed into the brain cell. In other words, the brain cells are starving, even though they are submerged in sugar. This is a factor for the disturbance of neurogenesis. In this sense, reduce the amount of sugar and supplement it with medium-chain fatty acids, for example, coconut fat. Coconut fat still works when this insulin function is suspended. But stress was the cause. Yes, exactly. Stress is a big topic.
But how does one avoid stress? I have not discovered the secret yet.
This is a topic in itself, stress prevention. But everyone can try different things. There is no key solution, because everyone has different stress and different ways to release valves. Some need exercise, others prefer meditation.
But it is worth it. You need the brain as much as possible. That is the best prevention. Neurogenesis takes place. Let's sum it up. Healthy diet, little stress, good sleep, exercise is included. Then, this neurogenesis takes place in the hippocampus. The hippocampus can grow, even in me. Just imagine, my brain is only part of the brain. That can grow, even in old age. And if you don't need it, then it shrinks. That can be measured. With the MRI, you can measure the hippocampus. If I measured your hippocampus every year, and I see it grows, then I know you are living sensibly. If it shrinks, then I also know what you're up to. That is the encouragement for everyone. The hippocampus can grow until we're 100.
I think that's a very important piece of information. I have the feeling that many think, with age, everything goes down slowly, you break down. Alzheimer have so many people by now that this is a fact. You almost start preparing for it. But that you can do so much preventively, and that it can continue to grow is something I found super important.
That's great, I'm happy too. I'm letting mine, at least grow a little every day.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you, Heinz, for shedding light on this topic here. And that we can all do something, which usually doesn't even cost anything. Thank you very much, dear Heinz. Dear viewers, I wish you in this sense a good neurogenesis and a soon reunion. Goodbye. Thank you for watching from Swiss Health Television, QS24. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel up here, because here you can also watch all programs ad-free. But also, subscribing to our YouTube channel is very helpful for us. Here is a selection put together for you of programs that you might also be interested in. All the best.